wise men.
What if everything you believed about Elvis Presley's final wishes was a lie? In March 2024, construction workers renovating a Memphis law office made a discovery that would shatter decades of carefully crafted narratives. Hidden in a forgotten vault was a document that would expose one of the greatest betrayals in entertainment history. Elvis Presley's secret will, dated 1976, revealed shocking truths about those he trusted most. The hidden vault discovery. The sledgehammer struck the wall with the same rhythm Marcus Williams had been using all morning. March 15, 2024, was supposed to be just another day of renovation work at the old Jameson & Associates law firm in downtown Memphis. The building, constructed in 1923, held decades of legal history within its walls. Marcus had been hired to update the offices, tearing down outdated partitions and modernizing the space for new tenants. When his hammer broke through what appeared to be a standard interior wall, Marcus expected to find the usual collection of dust and forgotten construction debris. Instead, his flashlight illuminated something extraordinary: a steel safe, approximately 2 feet square, embedded within the wall itself. The safe bore no markings, no indication of its contents or age. Its presence was so unexpected that Marcus initially thought he had discovered some kind of building infrastructure equipment. The building's owner, contacted immediately, had no knowledge of any safe within the walls. Property records dating back to the 1920s made no mention of such a feature. The mystery deepened when a locksmith determined that the safe was a high-end model from the 1970s, far newer than the building's original construction. Someone had deliberately concealed this safe within the wall, then built around it so seamlessly that its existence had been forgotten. When the safe was finally opened, its contents defied all expectations. Inside lay a collection of legal documents, all dating to 1976. The papers were pristine, protected from time and moisture by the safe's seal. Among them was a document that made everyone in the room hold their breath: a last will and testament bearing the unmistakable signature of Elvis Aaron Presley. The authentication process began immediately. Handwriting experts, forensic document analysts, and legal historians were called in to verify what seemed impossible. The signature matched known samples of Elvis's handwriting perfectly. The paper and ink were consistent with 1970s materials. Most importantly, the document was notarized by a Memphis attorney named Harold Morrison, who had died in 1978 under circumstances that suddenly seemed suspicious. The implications were staggering. If authentic, this document predated Elvis's known final will by over a year. It contained provisions that directly contradicted the official will that had governed his estate since 1977. Most shocking of all, it revealed a side of Elvis that the world had never seen. A man who suspected betrayal from those closest to him and had taken extraordinary steps to protect his true wishes. The secret will painted a picture of Elvis as far more aware of his precarious position than anyone had realized. He had recognized that his inner circle might not truly understand his intentions, and had quietly taken steps to ensure his true desires would eventually be known. The document's discovery wasn't just a legal revelation. It was archaeological evidence of a conspiracy that had successfully hidden the truth for nearly half a century. As news of the discovery spread through legal and entertainment circles, one question dominated every conversation: who knew this will existed, and why had it been hidden for so long? The answer would prove more shocking than the discovery itself: the double life document. The year 1976 marked a turning point in Elvis Presley's relationship with trust. While the world saw the king of rock and roll dazzling audiences, those closest to him witnessed a man increasingly suspicious of those around him. The discovery of a secret will in Memphis revealed that his doubts were not merely drug-induced paranoia, but rational responses to very real threats to his autonomy. Harold Morrison, a discreet estate attorney, became Elvis's confidant during this time. Unlike the high-profile lawyers who usually handled Presley's affairs, Morrison specialized in quiet, loyal service to wealthy clients. When Elvis contacted him, it was through intermediaries, ensuring secrecy. Their meetings, always after hours and without Elvis's entourage, revealed a side of the performer few had seen: thoughtful, strategic, and deeply concerned about his future. Morrison's notes documented Elvis's realization that his financial world was being manipulated. He noticed discrepancies in reports, unexplained fees, and business moves carried out without his consent. His trusted attorneys offered evasions, suggesting a coordinated effort to keep him uninformed. The secret will reflected Elvis's determination to reclaim control. Unlike his public will shaped by advisors, this document was his unfiltered voice. Each provision was carefully considered with Morrison, away from any financial interests that might have swayed him. He expressed unease over Priscilla's continued influence despite their divorce. Though she appeared to focus on Lisa Marie's welfare, Elvis suspected she was securing a role in his business decisions. Morrison's records also revealed Elvis's fear of posthumous exploitation. He had watched other performers' estates commercialized against their values and wanted to safeguard his own image, particularly Graceland, which he insisted remain a private family sanctuary. Most poignant were his concerns for Lisa Marie. He feared that those in control after his death would prioritize profit over her emotional and educational needs. He sought protections to ensure she would be raised by his values, not the ambitions of others. This hidden will was more than a legal document. It was Elvis's attempt to preserve not only his fortune, but also his dignity, his privacy, and his daughter's future. It testified to a man betrayed by those closest to him, determined that his true wishes would prevail, even if he would not live to defend them. Priscilla's calculated campaign. The divorce between Elvis and Priscilla Presley in 1973 was presented to the world as an amicable parting of ways, a mutual decision between two people who had simply grown apart. Yet behind the polished statements and carefully staged appearances was a reality far more complicated. The later discovery of Elvis's secret will revealed just how calculated those years truly were, and how Priscilla's actions formed part of a long-term strategy to position herself as the ultimate authority over Elvis's estate and legacy. Court filings show that Priscilla accepted what appeared to be a modest settlement by celebrity standards, $800,000 in cash, sporadic alimony, and 5% of Elvis's publishing companies. To most observers, it seemed fair for a brief marriage, but the will uncovered years later suggested that this acceptance was only the opening move in a much larger game. Within months, Priscilla began weaving herself back into the fabric of Elvis's business empire. She remained in close contact with Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's powerful manager, and increasingly appeared at meetings with his lawyers and accountants. Though she had no official role, she became a constant presence, framing her involvement as concern for Lisa Marie's future. Over time, Elvis's team began treating her as an insider, a position she quietly nurtured. Morrison's notes, discovered with the secret will, showed Elvis's unease at this growing influence. He was troubled that Priscilla often seemed better informed about his financial affairs than he was himself. He suspected someone inside his organization was funneling her sensitive information. The image of a devoted ex-wife was convincing in public, but privately she was cultivating alliances and expanding her reach into Elvis's personal empire. Phone records later subpoenaed during the authentication of the will added to this suspicion. They revealed a surge of communications between Priscilla and key business figures in the months before Elvis's death. These calls were too frequent and too strategically timed to be dismissed as casual contact. Most shocking were records of calls between Priscilla and Harold Morrison's office shortly before Morrison's sudden death in 1978. Morrison, who had helped Elvis draft the secret will, died unexpectedly of a heart attack at 42, despite having no history of heart disease. The coincidence raised troubling questions that were never investigated at the time, but later reignited scrutiny once the will surfaced. The documents also revealed that Elvis himself recognized Priscilla's campaign. He feared that after his death she would emerge as the dominant figure controlling his estate, not because of entitlement, but because of the sympathy and loyalty she had carefully preserved. In Morrison's notes, Elvis admitted feeling manipulated, describing his ex-wife as someone who had outmaneuvered him in ways he had never anticipated. The secret will thus became more than a legal document. It was Elvis's attempt to push back against the tide of influence gathering around Priscilla. It reflected a man who had realized too late that the person he once trusted most was orchestrating her own rise, and that his legacy, his fortune, and even his dignity were at risk of being defined by her long after he was gone. The real inheritance plan. The secret will revealed Elvis Presley's true vision for his legacy, and it bore little resemblance to the official document that had governed his estate since 1977. While the known will concentrated power and wealth in the hands of a select few, Elvis's hidden intentions distributed his fortune among dozens of individuals who had served him faithfully throughout his life. The difference spoke not only to financial priorities but to a deeper set of values about loyalty, dignity, and how a life's work should be honored. The most striking aspect of the secret will was Elvis's detailed provisions for his employees and musicians. Instead of treating them as replaceable workers, he recognized them as family. His bodyguards, Red West and Sonny West, were to receive $50,000 each, along with annual payments for life. His core musicians, including James Burton and Ronnie Tutt, were promised similar amounts in recognition of their role in shaping his sound. Graceland's household staff also featured prominently. Mary Jenkins, the cook who had cared for the family for over a decade, was to receive $25,000 and guaranteed employment maintaining the estate for as long as she wished. Lisa Marie's nanny, Pauline Nicholson, was promised $100,000 earmarked for her own children's education. These provisions revealed Elvis's understanding that those who devoted their lives to him deserved lasting security for their families as well. Perhaps the most visionary clause was Elvis's plan to create the Presley Foundation for struggling artists. The will allocated $2 million to establish an endowment supporting musicians in financial or career hardship. Jerry Schilling, Larry Geller, and Dr. George Nicopolis were appointed trustees, ensuring the foundation served artists rather than administrators. It was Elvis's way of reaching back to help the kind of young musician he once was. Elvis's wishes for Graceland contradicted everything that happened after his death. Rather than opening it to the public, he intended it to remain a private residence for Lisa Marie and her future family. He explicitly prohibited turning it into a museum or tourist attraction, instructing that its upkeep be funded through music royalties to preserve it as a sanctuary. His provisions for Lisa Marie reflected deep paternal foresight. Instead of granting her full control of the estate at 25, he established a trust that would provide for her living expenses while protecting the principal until she reached 35. The trust also mandated counseling and emotional support, recognizing the unique challenges of being his daughter. Elvis's vision for his music catalog was equally protective. He restricted its use, banning advertising jingles, political campaigns, and exploitative compilations. Instead, his songs could appear only in projects that honored his artistry, including curated reissues and respectful tributes. He even anticipated biographical films, granting Lisa Marie final approval to prevent exploitative portrayals. Finally, Elvis created safeguards against estate manipulation. A 5-member board comprising Lisa Marie, Jerry Schilling, Larry Geller, Vernon Presley, and Priscilla Presley as one voice among equals was required to make all major decisions by majority vote. This ensured that no single person could control his legacy. In every clause, the secret will reflected a man determined to protect not just his wealth, but his dignity, his music, and his daughter's future. It was the testament of someone who understood both the fragility of trust and the permanence of legacy. The cover-up conspiracy. The mysterious death of Harold Morrison in February 1978 marked the beginning of one of entertainment history's most successful cover-ups. Morrison, the discreet attorney who had drafted Elvis Presley's secret will, was found dead in his office just 6 months after Elvis's passing. The official cause of death was listed as sudden cardiac arrest, yet the circumstances surrounding his demise raised troubling questions. Questions that went unanswered until the discovery of the secret will forced investigators to revisit the evidence with fresh eyes. By all accounts, Morrison was thriving in early 1978. He had recently acquired several new high-profile clients, was planning an office expansion, and showed no signs of ill health. His secretary, Dorothy Hayes, recalled that Morrison seemed upbeat and forward-looking, a man with no inkling of the fate that awaited him. A clean bill of health from a physical exam just months before only deepened suspicions about his sudden collapse. The timing of his death was particularly significant. Legal disputes over Elvis's estate were already surfacing, and Morrison was the one man who could testify to the existence of an alternative will that would upend everything. By dying when he did, the only person with first-hand knowledge of Elvis's secret wishes was silenced permanently. What happened immediately after his death was even more suspicious. Within days, Morrison's office was stripped of its files by a group claiming to represent his family. Hayes later testified that the men removed not only active case files but archived materials, storage boxes, and even personal effects. Behavior more consistent with a coordinated sweep than a grieving family's retrieval. Phone records later obtained revealed a darker layer. In the weeks before his death, Morrison's office received multiple calls from numbers tied to Elvis's official legal team, as well as repeated calls from a line registered to Priscilla Presley herself. This suggested that key players in Elvis's circle knew of Morrison's involvement and possibly feared the will's exposure. Even more damning was Morrison's personal calendar. The day after his death, he had an appointment labeled simply EP Estate Matter, along with a phone number traced to a private investigation firm specializing in document authentication. It appeared Morrison had been preparing to confirm the will's validity. Jerry Schilling later admitted Morrison had reached out to him weeks before his death about important information regarding Elvis's true wishes. At the time, Schilling dismissed it as opportunism. In hindsight, it was almost certainly a final attempt to protect Elvis's legacy. The cover-up stretched further still. Several of Elvis's staff and musicians recalled being pressured into signing gag agreements, forbidding them from speaking of any alternative inheritance Elvis may have mentioned. Threats of crushing legal action kept them silent. Perhaps the most chilling revelation came from a letter Morrison had written to his brother shortly before his death. In it, he described threats, surveillance, and even a break-in at his office. He warned that if anything happened to him, the FBI should be contacted about documents hidden in his office. That warning was ignored. Only decades later, with the emergence of the secret will, would Morrison's words be vindicated. His death, once dismissed as natural, now looked like the first move in a carefully orchestrated campaign to erase Elvis Presley's true wishes from history, Lisa Marie's stolen legacy. The most heartbreaking revelation in Elvis's secret will was the elaborate protection system he had designed for his daughter, Lisa Marie. Comparing the hidden document to what actually happened to her inheritance reveals the devastating impact of suppressing his true wishes. The little girl he tried so hard to shield became a victim of the very exploitation he foresaw. Under the secret will, Lisa Marie would have received her inheritance through a carefully structured trust designed to balance security with responsibility. Instead of full control at age 25, as stated in the official will, Elvis's plan created a graduated system. At 18, she would have received a generous allowance for education and living expenses. At 25, access to investment income. Full control would come only at age 35, when Elvis believed she would have the maturity to handle vast wealth wisely. More significantly, Elvis allocated $500,000 for psychological counseling and life coaching to help her cope with the burdens of fame, wealth, and carrying his legacy. He recognized that being his daughter would present lifelong emotional challenges and sought to provide sustained professional support. The secret will also established an educational trust to fund not only formal schooling but cultural experiences abroad. Elvis wanted Lisa Marie to travel, to see the world beyond Graceland, to counteract the dangerous isolation of celebrity life. Touchingly, he named trusted confidants to guide her development. Jerry Schilling was designated guardian and mentor, ensuring she would grow up with authentic stories of her father. Larry Geller was appointed spiritual advisor, charged with passing on the beliefs that had shaped Elvis's worldview. These roles would have provided Lisa Marie with grounded personal connections to her father's true self, rather than myth and rumor. The reality was tragically different. Without these protections, Lisa Marie inherited her fortune in a single sum at 25, unprepared for the responsibility. The emotional and financial support her father planned never reached her. Her well-documented struggles with addiction, finances, and relationships might have been softened or prevented if Elvis's blueprint had been honored. Financially, the contrast was equally stark. Elvis had structured the trust to preserve the principal while providing steady income, ensuring long-term security. The official estate instead permitted the sale of core assets, including portions of his music catalog, leaving Lisa Marie vulnerable to poor investments and market downturns. The secret will also contained a profoundly personal inheritance, annual letters Elvis had written for her birthdays, filled with advice, love, and encouragement. These were found decades later in Morrison's safe, unseen by Lisa Marie, who died in 2023 without ever knowing of them. Elvis even anticipated her potential struggles with addiction, creating a fund for treatment and recovery. He had lived through those dangers himself and knew the risks his daughter might face. In the end, the secret will proved prophetic. Elvis had foreseen nearly every major challenge that later scarred Lisa Marie's life. His plans might have spared her much suffering, but they were buried, along with his truest intentions for the daughter he loved most. The Graceland deception. Nothing in Elvis Presley's secret will was more explicit than his instructions regarding Graceland. The mansion that later became one of America's most famous tourist attractions was never meant for strangers. In the hidden document, Elvis wrote with detailed, passionate language about preserving his family home as a private sanctuary. Its eventual commercialization was not just a business decision, it was a direct violation of his most sacred wishes. The will described Graceland as the heart of the Presley family legacy and ordered that it remain a private residence in perpetuity for Lisa Marie and her descendants. Elvis envisioned his daughter raising her own children there, maintaining the family bond to the home he loved most. To ensure this, he directed that income from his music catalog would cover upkeep, so the property would never need to be exploited for revenue. Elvis's instructions extended far beyond ownership. He specified that the mansion be preserved exactly as he left it, but only for family use, not for public display. His belongings, books, and clothing were to remain untouched, personal heirlooms for Lisa Marie rather than attractions for tourists. The meditation garden, his final resting place, was designated as sacred ground never to be open to outsiders. The reality could not have been more different. Within 5 years of his death, Graceland's doors swung open to guided tours. Strangers filed through his bedroom, his kitchen, and his private living room. The spaces where Elvis had eaten midnight meals or relaxed with friends became stops on a carefully designed museum route. What he wanted as a sanctuary became a stage for curiosity seekers. The secret will revealed Elvis's deep dread of such exploitation. He had seen other celebrity estates turned into tourist traps and inserted explicit prohibitions against gift shops, tours, or museums. He wanted Graceland to remain what it was always meant to be, a home, not a business. Even more troubling, records suggest Priscilla knew of his intentions long before his death. Phone logs and witness testimony showed Elvis discussed his wishes with her, emphasizing that Graceland should remain private for Lisa Marie. Her later decision to open it to tourists was not ignorance but a conscious rejection of Elvis's instructions. The financial justification for commercializing Graceland was also dubious. Elvis had allocated sufficient income from his catalog to cover maintenance indefinitely. The choice to open the estate appeared rooted less in financial necessity and more in Priscilla's desire to control the Presley legacy and remain in the public eye. Elvis had even prepared for financial difficulties. His will allowed for Graceland to be sold privately if needed, with the condition that it remain a residence. Lisa Marie would have first rights to buy it back when she matured. This alternative would have preserved privacy while solving any legitimate money concerns. Most tragically, Elvis wanted Lisa Marie to one day raise her own family at Graceland, hearing the laughter of grandchildren in its halls. Instead, she grew up watching strangers wander through her home, her most intimate memories commodified. The transformation of Graceland into a tourist attraction was more than a betrayal. It was the final intrusion upon Elvis's dignity, the man who feared fame's invasions left with no refuge, even in death. The legal reckoning. The authentication of Elvis Presley's secret will in the year 2024 triggered a legal earthquake that reshaped everything the world thought it knew about his estate and the people who had controlled it for nearly 5 decades. Modern forensic techniques confirmed beyond doubt that the document was genuine, raising immediate questions about why it had been hidden and whether crimes had been committed to keep Elvis's true wishes buried. Estate law experts unanimously agreed the secret will should have superseded the 1977 document. It was dated earlier, properly witnessed, and fully compliant with Tennessee law. Its suppression, scholars declared, constituted one of the most successful estate frauds in American history, with financial consequences running into the hundreds of millions of dollars. The first legal shockwaves came from Elvis's musicians and staff. Many, still alive, had long believed Elvis overlooked their years of loyalty. Discovering he had provided for them generously, only to have it stolen, ignited lawsuits demanding not only their original bequests, but decades of compound interest and punitive damages for fraud. Jerry Schilling, named guardian for Lisa Marie in the secret will, became the most vocal champion for restoring Elvis's true wishes. Schilling's lawsuit sought to void every estate decision made since 1977. His legal team argued that business deals, licensing agreements, and commercial ventures undertaken by the official estate were all invalid, built on a fraudulent foundation. If courts agreed, the Presley estate could be forced to return hundreds of millions in revenue. The evidence most damaging to Priscilla Presley came from phone records linking her directly to Harold Morrison's office before his sudden death in 1978. Legal analysts concluded that Priscilla not only knew about the will but actively helped suppress it. Her actions met definitions of fraud, conspiracy, and even elder abuse. If Morrison's death was proven connected to the cover-up, manslaughter charges were not impossible. Investigators reopened Morrison's case with modern forensics. His exhumed remains tested positive for digitalis, a heart medication capable of inducing cardiac arrest in someone with no heart disease. Coupled with threatening letters he had documented and the suspicious timing of his death, prosecutors launched a full murder inquiry. Complications multiplied worldwide. Elvis's estate had conducted decades of licensing in Europe, Asia, and Australia, all potentially invalid if the secret will was enforced. Entertainment lawyers warned this could become the largest estate litigation in history, with damages exceeding $1 billion. Graceland itself posed thorny challenges. Millions of visitors had paid to tour Elvis's home in direct violation of his wishes. Could refunds be demanded? Did heirs deserve compensation for decades of unauthorized commercial exploitation? And could Graceland even remain open while lawsuits swirled? After Lisa Marie's death in 2023, her estate became the center of the legal storm. Her children, Elvis's direct heirs, stood to inherit the corrected estate, but they also faced the immense burden of unraveling nearly half a century of fraudulent management. Their lawyers estimated decades of litigation and tens of millions in legal costs. The most explosive revelation came from Morrison's own hand. In his safe, investigators discovered a written confession detailing threats, naming individuals who pressured him, and even including secretly recorded tapes of phone calls. These recordings provided chilling proof of a conspiracy that stole Elvis's final dignity and denied his daughter the protection he had so carefully planned. The King's final victory. The ultimate revelation in Elvis Presley's secret will proved that the King of rock and roll had been far more strategic than anyone ever imagined. Hidden within the document's intricate legal language was a shocking provision Elvis called his resurrection clause. It was a brilliant trap designed to activate only if his true will was discovered after a long period of suppression. With devastating precision, Elvis had anticipated betrayal from those closest to him and planned his revenge from beyond the grave. The resurrection clause laid out detailed instructions for what should happen if the will was uncovered more than 20 years after his death. Elvis reasoned that such a delay could not be accidental but rather deliberate suppression, and therefore the discovery would trigger automatic penalties. In effect, he created a posthumous sting operation, using his own estate as bait to expose the greed and treachery of those who had claimed to love him. Under the clause, anyone who had profited from hiding the secret will was required to return not only their ill-gotten gains, but also pay triple damages as punishment. For Priscilla Presley, who had controlled the estate for decades and accumulated tens of millions of dollars, this meant potential financial ruin. The provision ensured she would end up with less than if she had simply honored Elvis's wishes from the start. The clause also guaranteed exposure of the betrayal. Elvis had anticipated that suppression might involve violence or intimidation, so he documented everyone with knowledge of the will and required that this list be handed to law enforcement and the press. The resurrection clause made certain that the truth of his betrayal would one day be revealed, no matter how powerful the conspirators became. Harold Morrison's hidden confession provided the final element of Elvis's master plan. At Elvis's instruction, Morrison had prepared detailed accounts of threats he received, compiling a full record of the conspiracy. Though his death had delayed its release, the resurrection clause ensured the evidence would surface when the time was right. The most devastating aspect of the plan was Elvis's foresight in applying compound interest and inflation adjustments to the stolen inheritances. Every dollar wrongfully withheld grew exponentially across decades, creating damage awards greater than the current value of the entire estate. Elvis had guaranteed that betrayal would bring destruction equal to the time his wishes were denied. The legal activation of the resurrection clause began as soon as the will was authenticated. Courts froze all estate assets, while forensic accountants calculated damages. Even Priscilla's personal wealth, built during her years of control, was seized pending judgment. Jerry Schilling, named executor in the secret will, announced that proceeds from the penalties would fund the Presley Foundation for struggling artists. Its first grants would aid the families of musicians and staff Elvis had originally sought to support, restoring his intended generosity. Tours of Graceland were suspended, with plans to restore the home for Lisa Marie's children and close the meditation garden to public intrusion. Most stunning of all, sealed letters Elvis had left for those who betrayed him were finally opened. Messages that revealed not only his foresight but his enduring heartbreak over the people he had once trusted most. Elvis Presley's secret will wasn't just a hidden document, it was a ghost from the past breaking through decades of silence. For years, fans trusted that his legacy had been fiercely guarded, but the truth spilled out like a song he never got to sing. The resurrection clause wasn't an accident. It was Elvis leaving breadcrumbs for the world, ensuring that betrayal could never bury his voice. And when the truth finally surfaced, it didn't just rewrite a family story, it shattered an illusion the world had believed for generations. Elvis may have left the stage, but his final act was this: to speak louder in death than those who tried to silence him in life. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Elvis foresaw the betrayal, or was this secret? Will his last desperate safeguard? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so his voice keeps echoing long after the curtains close. The woman the world saw as his devoted ex-wife had orchestrated a conspiracy that robbed the king of his final dignity and his daughter of her rightful inheritance. What this hidden document reveals about Priscilla Presley will change everything you thought you knew about the aftermath of Elvis's death. Prepare yourself for the truth that was buried for 47 years.